So about 2 months ago, I put my PhD on hold and have officially not been working on my PhD for 2 whole months. So my stipend is on pause, my research is on pause. Basically, everything to do with my PhD is on hold. Okay, dramatic intro, but it is the truth, but I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. First of all, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for being here. I know it's been a little while. It has been around the same amount of time that my PhD has been on hold. If you are new here, my name is Ciara and I'm a second year, soon to be third year PhD student in computer science, sharing my sort of research journey and my PhD journey, as well as some tips for staying productive and getting your PhD done in the best time and in the best way, as best as I can. So if you like the type of content, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. They will be coming back to our more regular uploads now, so thank you all for sticking around in the meantime. Yes, my PhD is on hold, but not for a super scary reason. I am doing an internship at the moment with an industry partner. That is something that I actually have to do as part of my PhD program because my PhD is a specific type where we're part of a centre for research training. What that means is it's not sort of the university that is covering my fees, but it is the Centre for Research Training, which is partially funded by a research body in Ireland, but it's also partially funded by the industry partners that we have. And that means that we have to, during our PhD, do a 4 to 6 month internship or industry placement, it's called really, with one of our industry partners. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm not going to share what company I'm working for because I do want to be able to talk about my experience as sort of honestly and openly as possible. And I don't think that it's really appropriate to be sharing where that company is. So I will be doing a little bit more videos on the internship process and how I'm finding it and what it's like really working in tech, because that's something that I've never done before. I've never worked in industry in tech before until now. So I will be doing a little bit more on that. So do be sure to put your requests into the comments below because I will be checking these out to see what kind of internship related videos you'd like to see. So I guess the reason that I haven't been posting videos is because transitioning from doing my PhD to doing the internship has been a really big change. And I usually find it really difficult to sort of adapt to new environments and to new schedules because it is going from the more flexible PhD schedule that I've shared numerous times on this channel that I do like to mix up the way I work. Some weeks I'll work really, really early in the mornings and I like to finish up around lunchtime. Other times I'll work in the evenings and it means having a nice long morning of activities or something. Sometimes I do a traditional work week, 9 to 5 kind of thing. Sometimes I break it up into 2 sections, so I'll do a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the evening. It really just depends, and I personally feel like that really works well for me, and I feel like that allows me to get a lot of work done while sort of still enjoying my days no matter what is going on, especially because I do run a business in my free time, and that means that the flexibility is really important because it means I can have parts of the day, if something comes up for the business that I need to do, I can do that. Whereas in a sort of traditional corporate job, there really isn't any room for that. So far, it's just been learning the ropes of what it's really like to work in a corporate job. I'll definitely be doing a dedicated video on that, but for today I just wanted to talk about sort of taking the break and sort of the pros and cons to taking a break, as well as how to take a break from your PhD successfully, because I do think it's something that is worth doing or that you will end up doing at some point. Everyone will take some form of break from their PhD, long or short. Before we get into sort of longer breaks, it is absolutely so important that you are taking shorter breaks from your PhD at regular intervals throughout the 4 years. I know a lot of people like to sort of save up their holidays and just do one longer holiday in each PhD year, like take a couple of weeks off back to back. I do feel like if you're not taking regular time off every couple of months, it is going to be more likely that you will get burnt out and you'll get really sick of your PhD and you'll find it really, really hard to do your work effectively. So I definitely think it's worthwhile to try to schedule in breaks and time off at regular intervals so that you don't get into a position where you're totally burnt out and needing to take possibly like a leave of absence just to recover. That is definitely not ideal, especially because it is the summertime and we're coming up to the new academic year in September. Start thinking now about when can you take time off at a time that's going to be most beneficial for you, depending on your sort of publishing pipeline, when you're planning on doing conferences and things like that. I usually like to take a full week off after I've submitted a paper because I'll just be usually exhausted after that. No matter what you do, I think in the week of submitting something, you end up doing a lot more hours than normal. And so it's important to take the balance afterwards, try not to get immediately thrown back into normal work, but to take some time and just decompress from it all really. And it really gives you then a time to start letting the creative thinking come back in and allow you to start thinking about what your next project might look like. In terms of longer breaks, depending on where you're doing a PhD can be anywhere between sort of 3 and 6 years. I think in the US, I think it's usually more like 5, 6, but in most of Europe, it's 3 or 4 years. And obviously that depends on whether you're doing it full-time or part-time. But in terms of taking longer breaks off at some point throughout your PhD, I definitely do feel like if you have the opportunity to, it's good to try and take some time to do some sort of industry internship throughout your PhD. One reason for that is that you actually do need to have a good sense of your career goals by the time you come to finish your PhD, and it will be expected that you'll have put together some sort of career plan. If you haven't had the chance to work in industry yet, which a lot of people I think do go from one degree to the next, it would mean that you haven't necessarily experienced those roles and you might not necessarily know what you're getting into if you plan on working in industry after you finish your PhD. Let's say you don't want to do an internship, or maybe you don't have the option to do an internship. Is it still worthwhile to take some sort of longer leave of absence and really shut off from your PhD at some point? I think it really depends on everyone, but so far I've found that having this time away from my PhD has definitely sort of made me appreciate it a lot more. I think second year is kind of a challenging one because everything sort of starts to ramp up. I think in first year everything is quite new, and in second year you can definitely start to hit pockets of low motivation a lot of the time, and I definitely found that that was happening. And now that I've been involved in my internship, I definitely am really excited to get back to my PhD, and I think it's given me a whole new sense of appreciation for it and a whole new drive to work really hard on it when I come back, which I think I was lacking for the first half of this year, the sort of January to May term before I started the internship. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, so I definitely feel the time away has done that, and I think it's been very, very worthwhile even just for that. I'm still sort of considering potentially taking a little bit of time off after my internship before starting back to my PhD, just to take an actual break, because that's not really something I have been able to do fully in a while. So far, anytime I've taken any sort of holidays over the past year, they've been ones that have been to do stuff for the business that I run, and it means that I haven't really had any time off in that time. So this is exactly what I'm saying earlier with the short breaks. These definitely need to happen so that we don't get burnt out. And I definitely feel like that's something that I probably need to do before returning to the research. So that could mean taking an extra couple of weeks unpaid. So taking an unpaid leave of absence, that might be something that I do. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted. I guess some cons of taking time off would be that you could lose touch with your PhD. So it could go the other way. You might not have that real sense of missing your PhD and you might end up feeling like you've lost that drive. So that's really why it's really important to line up your break well and try not to have it be something that just happens all of a sudden. Another could just be that perhaps I don't know what it's like in your university or with your supervisors, but if it's not something that is sort of a done thing, it could obviously be a challenge to negotiate with the supervisors around you or with the administrators or whatever. In computer science, it is pretty standard, I think, that people will do an internship in some tech company or possibly with another research group at some point. So that, wasn't an issue. And obviously for my specific PhD, we actually have to do this. So that meant that there was no issues with that. In terms of taking a generalized leave of absence, again, I do think they're pretty sort of good about it in my university and in my program, just because obviously they don't want people leaving the program, so they'd rather if you just took some time to get everything together. I think they'd rather give you that time than have you leave, because there's already been so much time and potentially funds invested in you, so it would definitely not be good for anyone if you were to drop out for some reason. So if you feel like there's a choice there between taking time off and dropping out, usually they will go with the time off, and hopefully it won't get to that stage. I really hope that that won't be the case for anyone. So now let's talk about some tips for having a successful break. So again, making sure that you know ahead of time when you're going to take the break is very important. And if you can try and schedule it so that it happens just after some big part of your PhD. We knew in December that I would be doing my internship and that it would be from the May to sort of September period. We didn't know the exact dates. So we knew that I would be going at some point in May. So we knew from January, which was when we started working on our new project, that we would have from January to May to work on something and ideally get a paper out. That was the plan. And we actually were planning on getting 2 out and didn't end up doing that. So probably that's going to be the next thing that I work on when I come back from the internship break. So if you know when you're going to be going on a break, then you can start to plan some work that will lead up to that point so that you're not leaving anything unfinished before you go on your break. So I think making a plan with your supervisors is really important for before you go on your break, to know what you're going to be working on for this period and what you want to have done before then. Whatever work you need to have done, really trying to get that done a little bit ahead of time before your break so that you don't have a sort of stressful time before your internship or before your break that you're worrying about getting things done in time. So trying to give yourself a little bit of an early deadline there. Another thing would be to clarify with your supervisors what the break means. Are you still meant to be doing little bits of work on your PhD from time to time, or is it a clean break? And if there are some projects going on that you need to be sort of working on throughout the break, putting together some sort of plan for how that's going to work. So for example, I'm doing some work with a couple of other universities at the moment where they're collecting data and I will analyze it, but it is very small amounts coming in every month or so. So it's not a huge undertaking when that comes through that I just rerun the analysis, send it back. But just being aware that if there is something like that going on, putting together some sort of plan for what you're going to do with that work during the break is really important. Another thing would be to set some goals for the break for yourself. So what do you want to get out of that break? And then that will really help you to sort of mold the break, I guess, in a way that will make sure you're getting the most out of it. So for example, with my internship, I really wanted to just get the experience of what it's like to work in the corporate world of tech, what it's like to work, in industry, and really just get a good sense of that. So I didn't really have much preference on what I was working on in a way, because I just wanted to see what it was generally like working there. Ideally I wanted to move a little bit away from what I'm doing in my actual research just to get a little bit more experience with something outside of my project, which I have done, and I have been, enjoying that. And then another thing that was important was sort of seeing what it's like to work on big data sets, because I do work on big data, but not to the same caliber that I'm working on with the company. So that is something that has been interesting and challenging. And so just figuring out what goals you might have for your break or your internship, whatever it is, so that you can, make sure that you're hitting those goals. And usually the person that you're working with for the internship will be willing to try and facilitate that, provided it lines up with what their goal for your internship is. I think that's important because you don't want to be coming back from the break or back from the internship not really getting what you wanted from it. Another thing that I would really recommend would be keeping a notebook somewhere for any PhD thoughts that come into your head throughout the break. You really want to be making the most of the complete time off by not working on your PhD if possible throughout the break. So really trying to separate those things out and just leave it sort of ruminating there, that will be the best way for your subconscious mind to start thinking about the PhD more. And eventually those thoughts will bubble up to the surface and you might end up having some really good ideas for your PhD. Having somewhere where you can sort of dump in any ideas that you have throughout the break that you can then return to once the break is finished is a really, really good idea, because even if you think you're going to remember these things, you absolutely won't. Our brains are not that great for doing things like that for us, so do keep track of them somewhere. Another thing would just be to make sure that you have the funding for a break from your PhD if needed. I think this would be a good thing to do no matter whether you're planning on taking a break or not. Setting up some sort of emergency fund in your bank or in another account, whatever it is, that covers a couple of months of expenses for your lifestyle would be so important, because I know it's very difficult being on the PhD stipends. Usually they're not a lot and it's very difficult to save, but you really don't want to be in a position where you are feeling stressed out and not able to take the time off that you need just because you can't afford to take that time off. And I think that's really important. So if anyone follows sort of the Dave Ramsey sort of finance type things, you should have an emergency fund of around 3 to 6 months of expenses, or at least €1,000 for emergencies, so that you don't feel like you can't take this time off that you need if there's something going on. If you need to take an unpaid leave of absence for any reason, it's important that you have funds there that will mean you can support yourself and live and not have any problems if you need to take any break. So that's something that I did pretty much at the beginning of my PhD. I started saving and putting aside money for my emergency fund. So I know if something happens where I just need to take a couple of months off, I can do that and it won't be an issue in terms of money. The last tip that I would have would just be to spend the break getting back into good habits. I've actually done the opposite of this with my break so far, and I'm hoping that the last 2 months of my break I will, or 2+, we'll see. I'm hoping now I'm in a place that I can get back to good habits. So you can sort of tell by the fact that I haven't posted a video in a couple months that means things aren't really going well for me in terms of like my schedule and things like that. Usually I find it really easy to organize my time and to get everything done and to do that with a good level of like healthiness going on. I haven't exercised since I started my internship, apart from walks. Like I haven't done a workout in a good while. Generally, it's not been too good. My place is usually a mess. I find it really hard to work in my normal space at the moment because I just don't feel motivated here. It's important to check in with yourself really often and try and come back from any bad habits that you've been creating. That's my plan for the next couple of months, to try and get back into a healthier routine, making sure that I'm going outside a lot more, making sure that I'm doing regular workouts. I guess spending less money because things are starting to open up a bit more here. So I've been spending a lot more money than I need to, and just making sure that everything is all good. So that's the last tip. That's a tip I need to be following at the moment and that I'm hoping that I will be following now. I always find it sort of challenging to come back and try and explain what's been going on and everything like that. So now this has been done and I have good plans for the next couple of videos coming up. I've been spending at least the time off from YouTube just thinking about the type of content that I'd like to make over the next couple of weeks. Looking forward to more of that. Thanks so much to everybody who has continued to support throughout the time that I have been away and who always seems to be there for me. Especially a huge thank you to all of my members who do make it possible for me to keep making these videos. The majority of my monthly income on YouTube comes from you guys who are supporting either through the memberships or through the little thank you stickers. So thanks so much to everyone for that. Thanks all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.